Okay, so here's a question about aspect ratio. The gentleman has set the project for portrait, but when he exports it, he gets it in landscape or widescreen mode. And how can he solve that problem? And he shows us here on the screen that he has it definitely set up in portrait mode. We don't know whether this image that's here on track 2 is actually a widescreen mode. But we'll talk a little bit about that when we go into solving this problem. And the other thing we should pay attention to is the little lock right here. We can see that it's white, and from that we can make out that it's basically unlocked. So he's not locking the aspect ratio in there. But what's happening when he's exporting it, the video is getting turned into widescreen, and presumably I would think that he's probably getting black bands on the top and on the bottom, and then he's getting a reduced image in here. So let's take a look at all of the parameters that you can adjust to make sure that you are getting your video the way you want. Okay, so first of all, we should know that if you set a project setting and on the timeline and you drop in something that's a different aspect ratio, it will change the project. Not only aspect ratio, but also speed and resolution and so forth. But we can pretty much say that he has started with going into project settings, and he has specified portrait. And the default, of course, is widescreen. And widescreen is 19 by 1080. 1920 by 1080. Okay, so he changed it to portrait, and that gives you the 1080 by 1920 as it should be. And we won't worry too much about frame rate here. But first of all, with just this basic thing and keeping this lock unlocked, so he's not locking in the aspect ratio, that means that if he takes a widescreen video and puts it in there, and he says match the media, immediately he's going to get it converted into a widescreen. Now, that could have happened. Let me just drag that in view here. We can see that we have this image down here, which may be in a widescreen mode. In other words, he's reduced it in size, but he's thrown it in a widescreen. So that might have converted his project. And let's just move this out of the way again. See that I put this in here, that even though I had made the project setting portrait to begin with, actually I don't know whether I did it. I better do it again here. So I'm just going to delete this. I'm going to set the project settings for portrait mode, and we're going to say OK. And then we're going to drop this in here, and we're going to go ahead and say match media. And immediately, of course, we can see that it's in a widescreen mode or landscape mode. And when we go back to project settings, we can see that this got changed. So how can we lock this down? And the way we lock it down, obviously, is by selecting it and then applying the lock to it. So that's the first thing that we probably want to do. And let's just, and you can see we've locked it into portrait mode here, but let's delete that for a second. And if we try to drop it in again, we can try and do match media. And let's see, yes, even though we have the lock on there, it will still change the aspect ratio. So that's not a good feature. It doesn't seem to be working very well. But nonetheless, I would probably lock it in. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, of course, is don't match the media if you're trying to go to a portrait mode. So let's just go back and set that project setting again. And we're going to set it into portrait mode. We're going to have our lock set. We're going to say OK. All right. Now, the second thing we can do in File Preferences is go and click on Editing. And in Editing, we have this photo placement here. And the default mode is Fit. And the other option is Crop to Fit. So in other words, if you drop a photo onto the timeline that is not a widescreen mode, it should crop it. actually this is a widescreen photo, and we have set our preferences in the editing mode, crop to fit. If we just use fit and we drop the picture in there, it's going to go like that, and we get these black bars. So let's just delete that for a second, and let's go back to preferences and editing again, and this time we're going to do crop to fit, and then we're going to drag that same picture down again, and now we can see we don't have the black bars. It's cropped. It's not necessarily framed the way we want. Maybe we want to see something else in the picture. That means we have to go in here and move this around in order to get exactly what it is that we want in the picture. So, but that is a fitting to be looking at as well if we want to maintain the aspect ratio. Let's put this one back here. Let's go back into the other mode. We're going back into preferences and editing, and we're just going to go ahead and put fit, and we're going to apply. Now we're going to put down a couple of these down on the timeline. We're going to keep our project settings. We are in the portrait mode, and then we're going to drop this other image down here on top. And this is this is like the one that he has on the bottom. So now let's just talk about the export part of it. When we go to export, we need to look at this part, the resolution here. And remember, 1080 by 1920 is the format that we want. If that's not what comes up here, then let's make sure that we select that. This mode right here is landscape, and the reverse, the 1080, okay, is the 1080 by 1920. You make sure we have that there, and it's a custom, and that will export it then into the proper aspect ratio. So the thing is to also check here, not only your project settings, but also your export settings. Because if you change it around here, this will get you exactly what you don't want. 1920, we'll go ahead and export that. And now this one here, it shows that it's being okay, but perhaps it's being okay because we locked it down. So let's just bring that in here. And now you can see that it go ahead and it changed it, which it shouldn't have done that. So let's make sure that when we export that we have it locked down. Let's double check our project settings. Portrait locked. And let's check our export settings. I think what we may have done is we may have found a bug here. We do have the 1080 by 1920. We are matching the project settings, and so it should be in that mode. But we have put this one picture in here. So let's just export it again, and this time it's number 24. So let's just bring that up again once it exports. Okay, this is number 24, and here we're now getting it properly set up. We can see here that we do have our thing across, but I think that probably is the nature of the issue, is that you got to make sure that we are in the custom resolution.